Okay, we're set to go. This is the meeting of the Mayor and Council of Princeton. It's October 8th, 2021. Madam Clerk, have we met the meeting notice requirements?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, can we have roll call, please?
Yes. Ms. Perrone-Lambrose, Ms. Niedergang,
Here.
Mr. Cohen,
Here.
Ms. Fraga,
Here.
Mr. Williamson, Ms. Sachs, Mayor Frida.
Here. Thank you. Do we have any announcements or reports? Seeing none, thank you. Do we have any public comments for items not on the agenda?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, all right, so we'll close that part. We'll go to our discussion section, Witherspoon Street, Nassau Street intersection in relation to New Jersey DOT traffic signal improvement project. Here's a mouthful. Okay, so I think where we were, Deanna, correct me, is that we had a deadline of last week, which got extended to today, and you could tell us where we are as of today.
I will do that. Thank you, Mayor. I have a short presentation to show, so I'll go through that and give you a response to where we are today. So let me share that. Okay, can you see the presentation full
Yes.
screen? Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you. Okay, now let me make sure I can get it to move. There we go. Okay. As you may recall, Princeton Council back in March of 2021 passed a resolution of support to approve DOT's preliminary preferred alternative for the reconstruction of the intersection of Witherspoon Street, as well as replacement of the traffic signal. The design at the time included a 25-foot wide opening on Witherspoon Street, and then the curb bump outs on the northern side of Witherspoon Street, as well as the southern side, the university side. When we went through our design process after March 2021, if you all recall, we changed the design in June of 2021 to have a much more reduced throat of Witherspoon Street at Nassau. So we, in our plan, had reduced to a 13.5-foot wide entrance. And after that point, we had submitted the documents to DOT. We were working with them and the engineers, and there was an assumption that we were all on board with this 13.5-foot wide entrance. We come to find out that in September, DOT had updated their preferred alternative to be a 22-foot wide entrance instead of the 13.5-foot wide entrance that we had showed. So that was a conundrum for us. We received a letter on September 23rd from DOT saying that this is now the preferred alternative. Princeton needs to approve this. There is the possibility of losing funding going forward. The rationale behind the 22-foot wide entrance is that it does allow all truck movements, and DOT has indicated to us that to reduce to anything lower than the 13.5-foot quite possibly will not be approved because it would reduce the truck access. So that's where we're at today in terms of the entrance off of Witherspoon Street. We came to council, if you recall, on the 27th of September to get additional support for our 13.5-foot design, not understanding that DOT was holding firm on the 22-foot wide entrance. We actually got a clarification on the 30th, so 3 days after the council meeting, that it is a 22-foot wide proposal, that they would not consider the 13.5-foot proposal. So that's why we're back here today, is to have this discussion so that you understand what is now on the table. From March to today as well, there was a change with the traffic controller box. If you recall, there was originally a proposal to have it in place of the kiosk on the north side of Nassau Street. Subsequent meetings occurred. DOT was able to reduce the size of the traffic controller box to a size that's comparable to the one at Nassau and Bayard Lane, and that's what's shown in the photo. They are also working with PSE&G to locate the controller box on the university side of the street. But they're still in process of working through that with DOT. They understand that, or with PSE&G, they understand that that is Princeton's priority to have it placed on the university side. But we have to wait and see what PSE&G can facilitate. So there is still possibility that it could go on the north side, at which point the idea was to replace the kiosks so that you didn't have multiple pieces of furniture, so to speak, street furniture on that side of the roadway. We did meet with DOT yesterday to talk about how to make it more palatable, the 22-foot wide entrance. And so we did request that we have a similar treatment at Witherspoon Street as we installed at Bank Street. And we came away with, at least from the staff level perspective, that this is definitely something that could be incorporated into the project, this type of treatment. We also asked that Opticom equipment be included in the traffic signal replacement, and that would facilitate emergency services movements at the intersection. And that both of those asks are incorporated into a resolution that we'll be bringing to council on October 11th. The last piece of it is, because we do have that 22-foot wide entrance from Witherspoon going into a proposed approximately 22-foot wide vehicular space on Witherspoon Street, we will want to consider some sort of bollards to direct vehicles through the space after they cross the crosswalk. And so T&M Associates has pulled up a few bollard options for us. You've got the fixed bollards or removable on the left side. In the middle, you can actually use a planter like this, and it's a similar type of crash testing and vehicle stoppage capacity as those bollards do. The last option would be something like these object markers and tough curb that is shown. It's, in our opinion, the least attractive, but it is definitely could be an option to redirect traffic to the 12-foot travel lane if we are still going with that type of a design for Witherspoon Street. So that's the presentation. So I'm going to stop the screen share. I think I stopped that, right? Okay. Yes, thank you.
Deanna, I just want to make a clarification. I'm pretty sure the answer to this, but earlier in your remarks, you said that reduction below a 13.5 foot opening might result in a loss of funding. I think you meant below the 22-foot wide.
I did. Thank you for clarifying that. Yes.
Yeah, apologies for being late. So can you just tell us the reason, what we're going to accomplish today is that, can you just brief, if you don't mind, thank you.
Sure. So I preface it by saying that when we had last come to council in September on the 27th, we had indicated that we were seeking your support of a 13.5-foot wide entrance from Nassau Street onto Witherspoon Street. And it was a misinterpretation on our part of what DOT was actually seeking. They provided a clarification after the meeting on the 30th that they are willing to construct a 22-foot wide entrance for Witherspoon Street at Nassau, but they will not go below that size. And that's what we're seeking confirmation from council on, is that council accepts the 22-foot wide entrance onto Witherspoon Street.
Thank you. And then the diagram that you had sent out, it's centered. The entrance is kind of centered, and you're proposing like a Bank Street type of entrance where it would be raised. Is that
Yes,
Mhm.
that's correct. As
Okay.
well as Opticom emergency services signal equipment at Witherspoon and Nassau.
Okay.
Eve?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Maybe I missed something. The dog was barking a lot. It's still barking. I'm not sure I understand that we have a choice. If this is what DOT is saying, and they control Nassau Street, I'm missing something here. If they say it has to be 22 feet and that's it, end of story, then our only decision is on the bollards, or what did I miss?
What-
Mark,
what-
Got it, Eve. You
What-
got
what-
it, Eve. That's it. But it's nicer to pretend like there's a decision, so we're all pretending like
We need to decide our realm of responsibility is, do we want to install something to then curtail the size of the street? And if so, I know I'm not using the right language here. And if so, what it would look like, or what might be acceptable, though I assume we have a little bit of time to play around with that. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to clarify.
Isn't our decision as to whether we want to let DOT construct the intersection as they're willing to do on their dime? And if we turn it down, we could always go back to them and say, we'll build it on our dime, but we're going to build it different. Isn't that the real decision point here today?
It's their road.
Well, I'm just asking Deanna if.
Okay.
I'm trying to get clarification.
yes, that is the overall kind of high level background overview of it.
Yeah.
Because DOT is willing to come in and replace the traffic signal, improve the intersection because it is a known pedestrian safety issue. And they're willing to do it on their own dime and next year. So if Princeton opts to not support the way that Witherspoon Street is treated, then the project could be lost. And then Princeton would, if we wanted to address the pedestrian safety issues at the intersection, it would be on us to apply to DOT for the permit to make the improvements ourselves.
Could we just, Eve, let me get right to you in a second, but Deanna, could you just say what you think the value of DOT paying for that work is? And then Eve can ask her question. Sorry.
I understand that it's in the realm of about $1 million is what the funding is that's on the line if Princeton does not proceed with this.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Eve, go ahead.
That was part of my question. The second part was, there's also no guarantee if we come up with another project and we still need DOT approval, and they could decide not to approve what we're doing, even if they're not paying, or would they pretty much agree to whatever we want.
No, you're correct. They could still deny the application because anything that has an effect on traffic on Nassau Street is under their purview to approve or deny.
Thanks, Steve. Leticia and then Michelle.
Mute. I'm not sure if I understood you, Deanna, that if DOT does the work, did I understand correct? Like they would be willing to do the same treatment as in on Bank Street?
Yes, that is our understanding that they are willing.
Great. Thank you. That was my question.
Okay, Michelle?
And the 22-foot wide would then allow truck turning from either eastbound or westbound traffic on Nassau?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I guess my next question is why wouldn't we do this 22-foot?
We had previously said, we were going to ask them, right? So we need to give them an answer. So we kind of before indicated we didn't want to agree to a wider than the 13 and a half. So we need to formally at some point agree. And I know we don't have a resolution, wasn't in the agenda package or in the announcement for this meeting. So we can't do that today, but we could do it Monday. But when is the deadline now for this, Deanna? Is it still today or are they giving us a few more days? Do they really care if it's Monday or Tuesday of next week?
In writing, it's October 8th, but I understand that we do have a little bit more time to be able to respond.
Okay, thank you. David and then Eve.
So I just want to clarify a little bit more about if we go with bollards, where those would be permitted to be installed. Because obviously if we put them right up by Nassau Street, then the trucks still can't turn. So I don't know, Deanna, if you have some kind of a diagram of what you might be envisioning for the layout of the bollards, but that would be interesting to me to see that.
We don't have an image of it yet because I think part of this also relates to will there be any design changes related to the Jeff spec presentation, which we're still working on. I mean, I could show you an image and put a line on it according to where once the trucks make the turning movements, a lot of the turning movements, obviously, if we have the through lane on the east side of the road, then we need to direct the vehicles back to the east side of the road. So it's some sort of either a diagonal line of bollards that runs to direct people across the service lane back into the drive lane, or say something that's perpendicular to the curb. So we don't have that worked out yet.
Okay, sorry. Eve, Michelle, and then Leticia.
Okay, so two questions. One is a kind of a follow-up to David's question. When are these other decisions, like the decisions on the bollards, is that something that'll come up on Monday along with the rest of the kind of Jeff spec implications? Or if not, what is the time frame for making those decisions, if you know?
I think it's something that we could show on Monday night.
Okay, and would we have
Yeah.
to make a decision about it on Monday night, or is it something that we have a little bit of time to play with?
I think we have a little bit of time to play with that.
Okay, and my second question is kind of, I mean, I am sure this is very distressing for you and all of you who have been dealing with DOT. And I guess, I don't know who I'm asking this question of the powers that be in the universe, but are we sure that like you thought that we had their agreement. We thought we had their agreement to something for a period of quite some time. And now all of a sudden we're finding out, no, we didn't have an agreement. So how confident are we that we now really have an agreement? And if we agree to this, that is it, and they're not going to come back and say, oh, what we really meant was. I don't know if you can answer that. I mean,
I'll jump in.
Good,
I'll
Jim.
jump in. We have it in writing. We have a letter from them that
okay,
that the 22 feet is what they will consider their preferred alternative.
and we never had the other.
No, we never had anything in writing on the 13.5 foot. We had back and forth with their design consultant who
Right.
was actually preparing plans with the 13.5 foot opening.
No.
So we made an assumption that it had been accepted by DOT. And it
I
never
guess,
had.
I guess we need to think going forward and dealing with them, you know, how we make sure that we don't have this kind of, I'm sure you're thinking about that. Make sure we don't have this kind of surprise again, because it doesn't sound like we did anything wrong. It wasn't like, oh, we shouldn't have done X, Y, or Z. But we need to make sure that we're, you know, we're on the same page as them. And, you know, because I know a lot of extra staff time and energy and expense pursued this option, which is no longer valid, which would have been nice to know 6 months ago or 3 months ago or whenever. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Michelle.
Yeah, so I'm just going back to the bollards. We had talked about electronic bollards, and I was just wondering, I mean, it would be really cool to be able to just, you know, have them be very flexible and timing and when you would use them. So have we looked into that? Because like the first design on the left, I would think maybe they came in an electronic form.
Yes, T&M is looking into that for us.
Great. Okay. Yeah, that's it.
Mia, did you have your hand up?
I don't want to belabor the point, but I did want to just agree with Eve and say that it was really not even a month ago in which council was told that DOT was unwilling to consider 22 feet, and that and when some of the merchant community expressed to us concerns about the safety of the 13 feet, we were told that we didn't have concerns and that in fact they were unwilling to consider anything wider than 13 feet. So I'm agreeing with Eve in terms of the process. It's very hard to make decisions without, you know, accurate information. So, and this is nobody's fault, but I agree. I think going forward in our communications with DOT, we just need to make sure that we're clear about what they want. So anyway, but I am belaboring the point, so sorry.
Okay, so Deanna, I just one question on this. So DOT is actually fine with either 22 or 25. So depending on what our discussion is about the rest of Witherspoon, we would still have that quote unquote flexibility for either one. It just sounds like we need to figure it out Monday night. Is that accurate?
I think our recommendation is stay with 22.
Okay. Okay. I got, sorry. Your recommendation is 22, but it sounded to me like DOT would be fine with either 22 or 25. I just want to make sure that's accurate in my thinking.
I don't know that I could say that. I mean, they have told us that their preferred alternative is 22 feet
Okay.
now. So it's 22 feet or no project.
Okay. I just want to make sure, because I think that bears on the discussion we will have at some point about what the heck we're doing in light of Jeff Speck's comments and recommendations. Michael, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to sort of back up engineering on this one point. If we're now at 22 feet, and it really shouldn't be any wider than 22 feet in our professional opinion, let's lock into that. Let's lock DOT into that now, and also put in a condition that we get to have some design flexibility so that we can design a good, safe, transitional, design for that mouth of that opening of Witherspoon Street that makes it safe as you come from Nassau into Witherspoon. I think we could do that, but yeah, I think it's workable, but we need to lock them into this before the number moves again.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so it sounds like on the intersection, we have till Monday night. We can figure out what we're doing on Monday. Deanna can tell DOT, Deanna or Jim can tell DOT on Tuesday. Sounds like 22 foot probably. It's about $1 million value if we don't agree to let them do the work. Okay, are there any other questions on the intersection? Because,
Yeah.
Michelle.
So I just want to say that when we come together on Monday night, again, if we can kind of show where the placement of those bollards are in, and I apologize if you
Yes.
showed it before, but that'll be part of it, part of the discussion. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yes, we can show that.
Right, so it'd be, right, a suggested location, right? Because it depends on what we're doing with the overall design,
Right.
right? Because we have to figure out what the overall design is, because if we're redesigning, then nothing Monday night's gonna be, might not be the actual design until time is
Okay.
allowed to actually figure it out. Even then, David.
Just real quick, I just want to put in a plea, I think, as I have all along, for maximum flexibility in terms of dealing with the bollard. So Michelle's point about electronic or something that can easily be taken down, put up, and, to maintain what we can do with the street, going forward would be great. So.
Yeah, David.
Yeah, I also have a question or a point to make regarding the bollards, which is the retractable bollards, I think, are envisioned with the intent of being able to close the street altogether. And I think that there are dangers and negative implications of placing bollards that would close the street altogether, too far from Nassau Street, because you would get vehicles trying to turn onto the street and not being able to proceed. So I would also like to get some indication from DOT that they're willing to place retractable bollards in their right of way, to help us make decisions about those retractable bollards going forward.
That's good, David, thanks. That's a great point. So we're actually talking about two different sets of bollards, one to close the street and one to take traffic in a certain direction once you're on the street. All right.
Yes, so noted. We'll make sure to follow up on that.
Okay. Is there anything else on the intersection that we need to chat about now? Just because we have the next item, which is Witherspoon Street Phase 1 design. So kind of makes sense.
I have someone that has their hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Dolores, very much.
Yeah, Tanika, I'm going to allow her to speak.
Sure.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, Tina. You could just say your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Tina Castillo, 79 Dempsey Avenue. I am dismayed at the way NJDOT has handled this and let us believe that they would be okay. Their own people were working on a 13.5-foot entrance, like you said, but here we are. And I am wondering if we couldn't, I'm now talking about the bollards at the entrance of the street. Could we not put bollards so that the actual entrance is 13.5 feet? So, because that will make it safer for pedestrians crossing there. And then have an additional third bollard in the middle to close off the street altogether to vehicular traffic, open it to pedestrian use. Because I remind you that what the public really wanted, what the customers wanted, is an all pedestrian plaza. And council has voted for a one-way street as a concession to the needs of the businesses, which I fully support. But I would just like to remind you the original impetus of this, which is to make a pedestrian plaza. And so I think that if you make the street pedestrian, except for the time of deliveries, then maybe you only need one set of bollards at the beginning of the street, and you don't need to worry about the bollards inside the street. That would save a lot of headache, both for designing it and for maintaining it. So that's just my question. to, I guess, to Deanna. Thank you.
Thanks, Tinica. So, Deanna, let me take a shot at that because you're kind of put in a position there between DOT and the public. And I would think that we as a town, and especially our engineering staff, could not misrepresent to DOT as to what's going to be constructed. And plus DOT is going to do the work. So I don't know that we could agree to take their money to build an intersection that they're going to detail and then do something that short circuits what they just built. I think that would be a large dilemma, mess, legal problem. DOT would definitely not sit back and accept that if we were to then change the intent of the intersection.
Correct.
Okay. We have another.
Yes, Lisa Sarasol.
Yep. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Like many
Lisa,
of you,
Lisa, could you just say your name and address for the record?
oh yes, excuse me, Lisa Sariasol, 98 Olden Lane.
Thanks.
As many of you, I'm taken aback by this news. However, I think that Tinica's point about the use of bollards at the top of Witherspoon Street could be an interesting technique to control the speed of drivers entering the rest of Witherspoon Street, whatever width it is. I know that safety is our priority in the redesign of this street. And I believe that DOT as well will say that safety and the community support are part of what they are looking for out of this project. So regardless of whether it costs $1 million or $100,000, I believe safety is also their priority. I'm part of a state highway safety initiative that reviews techniques for reaching a zero death goal for the state. And I can only imagine that safety is their top priority as well. So thank you for pursuing this with safety as the top priority.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, I don't see any other hands up at the moment. So why don't we go to the second part of the discussion? And then just for the public, I mean, we'll start the second part of the discussion, but if you want to ask a question further on the intersection, feel free. I mean, we're not going to say that you can't ask a further question on the intersection just because we're talking about phase one next. Go ahead, Deanna.
I was going to say it's going to be a short discussion because we are looking to table it today and cover it fully at the October 11th meeting as a work session. We've been reviewing Jeff Speck's recommendations. We're in the process of providing documents and graphics that hopefully will put it in a frame that everybody can understand what our design is versus what he's proposing versus how both of them work within the context of Witherspoon Street. And unfortunately, we just weren't quite ready with all of that today. So we'll share that on Monday night.
Okay, so just for the public, help me through this.
Yes.
Jeff Speck, I think, pretty much said, hey, you should make the roadway, whatever you do there should be wider. So you could decide to close it off, make it all pedestrian, or you could go back to a two-way street some point down the future. He, I think, preferred no curbs, although he has said we could do curbs or we could not do curbs. He had suggested, I think, different method for collecting water, and so collecting runoff and et cetera than what we had. I think he had suggested less green areas and do more with the line of trees and having channels under the trees or something. I'm just trying to make sure that the public understands kind of the major points of what Jeff had pointed out, because obviously not everybody was at his presentations. So I think those were kind of the major points?
A,
Deanna,
a
what
cou-
are-
a couple more. So just for background, in case people don't know, Jeff Speck has written books about walkable communities and spoke in Princeton, I guess a week and a half ago. And he looked at Witherspoon Street and the design while he was here. He supported a pedestrianization of Witherspoon Street from Nassau to Paul Robeson. So that's also a feature that is different from what we had been looking at. The idea was that you could close off from Nassau to Spring and Wholefish to Paul Robeson, and still allow cross traffic from Wholefish through Witherspoon to Spring Street. I know he had an idea of being able to make a left turn from South Tulane onto Spring to access the garage. That's a little bit to the side of our project, since our project doesn't have that range at this point. Yes, get rid of the green infrastructure, replace it with more trees and a built structure around the trees that would help to hold more of the water runoff rather than using green infrastructure. Get rid of bump outs and just have, say, a straight 22-foot wide space. Yes, curb, no curb. His idea is if you don't have curbs, you use the trees and bollards to create some of the edging. Michael, you want to add in?
Well, I was just going to say, the mayor mentioned that when he's trying to sort of summarize Jeff Speck's vision, that the central area would be wider so that it could be more flexible. So I just wanted to point out that if the area in the center, which is now under our current plan, a 22-foot cartway, curb to curb, if that gets wider, then the trees are going to have to move closer to the buildings, which will mean that the sidewalk area, what's traditionally the sidewalk area, the pedestrian area along the buildings will not be as wide as we had envisioned when we were working on the existing plan. I mean, the trees, something has to move if we're making the central area wider. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, and there was a little bit of discussion, and I have to go back and watch the video as to whether he supported streetlights or not. I know at some point there was discussion of if there's enough activity on the street, then you don't need streetlights because you'll be getting lighting, or consideration of string lights from building to building, which would then require that you work with property owners for metering and attachment to buildings. So there's a few different pieces, and that's what we're still collating our response to all of those.
Thank you very much for helping to summarize it so everybody watching has some idea what we're talking about when we refer to Jeff. Mia and then Michelle.
Yeah, I just wanted to build on these excellent summaries. And for the public who weren't at the lecture and are just trying to figure out what's going on, basically, this was actually the design that was council's first choice from the very beginning. There were a number of, both merchants and pedestrian and bike advocates who drew this possibility to our attention. And we were, told by our engineering staff and our engineering consultant that for stormwater reasons, this flexible design was not possible. So I think the reason why at, the 11th hour, 59th minute, where all of a sudden we took a pause was because someone who's very well respected and has experience designing all sorts of functional streets all over the world said that he thought this was possible. So we wanted to take a moment to see if what had been our sort of dream scenario was possible. And the reason why we wanted this was because of the flexibility. And just to tweak something that you said, Mark, I think the flexibility that appealed to us was the idea that we could actually have seasonal flexibility. So, in winter and cold months, a focus on, vehicular activity, but in summer months and in the evenings, it could be completely closed off. And so that sort of flexibility was something that we thought would appeal to everybody. And we heard from, in the past week, it seemed like here was a design that there could be real unity and everyone could get on board and be excited about. I'm gonna just provide a little spoiler alert here, which is that my sense from our staff in the past 2 days is that they don't think that it's possible, and that's what we're going to hear on Monday night. And I'm sorry to do that, but I just I don't want people to be spending all weekend fantasizing about things that it seems that what we're going to hear on Monday is the same thing that we've been hearing for the past year and a half, that for stormwater reasons, it's not possible. So, but that sort of documentation, from what I understand, is not yet fully fleshed out. Is that correct, Deanna?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, Michelle, Eve, and then David.
Yeah, well, Mia just popped my, burst my balloon here. So I was just gonna elaborate, but I think she's already covered it, that one of the main features was that there would be curbless and there would be like just a straight plaza from building to building. So, but I think we've already covered that.
Okay, Eve.
I just wanted to clarify that although Jeff Speck is an expert designer, there was no indication that he was intimately familiar, nor should he be, with New Jersey's new stormwater regulations. And so some of the things that he said to great acclaim in the room, as Mia indicated, and as we may find out definitively on Monday, are just not possible because of the new stormwater regulations, which would be a real shame, but we don't have discretion if that's the case. So
Deanna, should we clarify that we're not subject to those regulations? As a
We should.
municipality, we do not have to abide by them.
oh,
But part of the
Okay.
reason that we are providing stormwater management is to help mitigate downstream flooding conditions.
okay.
So we don't want to create a situation that's worse than it is today. And that is what we'll be discussing on Monday night.
And
Okay.
just to further clarify that is Witherspoon Street is pretty much 100% impervious. And the way our regulations are currently written, if you're 100% impervious and you're replacing with 100% impervious, it does not kick in stormwater management. We're not necessarily exempt. It's just for this project, we don't hit the trigger.
Okay, I didn't understand that. Thanks for clarifying. I mean, I do know there's, Spring Street is named Spring Street for a reason, so we have a substantial amount of flow. And, I think, that we would love it if it's possible. And if it's not possible from an engineering perspective, then obviously we need to know that. So thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, this is the headwaters for Harrisbrook, and it's documented as a waterway that is overwhelmed. I think there's a story about it being the flashiest stream in the US. And that speaks to, immediate runoff of impervious surfaces getting into the drainage system.
David, I know you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on this stormwater question again as well. I'm fully supportive of trying to manage as large a quantity of stormwater in this improvement as possible. I do think that having more walkable surface and less planted surface would be a benefit, as per Jeff Speck's suggestions. And so if there's a way to do pervious pavers and storage areas underneath that would do something similar to the planted areas that we've been looking at all along, I would be supportive of that. So I just wanted to put that out there as engineering continues to work on what is possible.
Thank you. That is being incorporated into what we're preparing for Monday night.
But I would just like, again, to caution everybody, because the weekend's coming and you may be thinking that there is a quick solution, that it is very, very busy underneath this street in terms of underground utilities. And our ability to do much under the street is very restricted.
Okay, so Monday night, we'll also be able to talk about timing as far as the grant we have for phase one, so we don't lose that, and et cetera, et cetera. So that'll be part of Monday night, Deanna.
Yes, timing, cost, and maintenance needs.
Thank you very much. Mia?
You're welcome.
I think that the timing is interesting because we're in the process of discussing a stormwater ordinance, and one of the concerns that we've heard expressed pretty widely is that some of the projects that make sense for the town, even from an overall walkability, sustainability, big picture, smart growth perspective, might be not possible because of the regulations in the ordinance. And I think it would be really unfortunate if, and I understand that we're technically exempt from the ordinance, but I think that it would be reinforcing people's concerns about the ordinance if this showcase project, we couldn't find an engineering solution to come up with the design that so many people in the community and so many disparate groups really feel makes sense. And if basically stormwater was the thing that stood in the way, I think that would send an unfortunate message to reinforce the very concerns that we're hearing about the regulations that we're moving to implement. So I would just like to ask our engineers to, and certainly what we heard at the lecture is that where there's a will, there's a way. And so I think what we want to hear from our engineering staff on Monday is if this is not possible, credible, detailed information that will stand the test of time of why we weren't able to move in a direction that so many groups felt it was the one solution that it seemed like everyone could agree on. So.
Okay. Any other new council comments? If not, we'll jump to the public. All right. Dolores, can we let Tinica back in?
Hanukkah,
Hi, Tina Castillo again, 79 Dempsey Avenue. I actually like the proposal to have a curbless streets. I don't know if it's possible, but if we do, it would be a lot safer for the waiters who would have to negotiate curbs or not if it became all pedestrian. And I'm also wondering whether there are other ways to catch rainwater other than by bioswales. For instance, if I'm not that hot on parking spaces on that street, but if you are going to install parking spaces, you might consider asking them to do double duty as collectors of rainwater. Mm-hmm. And with whatever you do, I entreat you to put in whatever traffic calming devices you can. And those planters, they look pretty and they're tall, they're sturdy enough, and they and when people sit behind them for their lunch or dinner, it will make them feel safe. And so, by the way, let me just step back also and express my support for the raised pedestrian crosswalk at the entrance, because that is already a really good traffic calming device. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tinica.
I have Sam Bunting.
Okay. Thank you. Sam, if you could just say your name and address before you start.
Yeah, my name is Sam Bunting. I'm at 99 Dempsey Avenue.
Thank
So
you.
I just have one question. So we've been talking about this for a very long time, and when are we going to stop talking about it?
I would hope Monday night.
So Monday night is that's the last time that we're going to discuss the design of Witherspoon Street.
Sam, other than taxes and death, I don't know anything else that's going to happen for sure, but I would say it's a high probability that that'll be close to the last time. I mean, look, I think realistically, Monday night's going to be, here's the concept we now, if we change the concept, it'll be, here's the new concept we want. But at some point, it's not like the whole design is going to happen magically Monday night. So we are going to have to talk about it again, because engineering and our consultants are going to have to come back to us and say, here's the actual detail of what you
Okay.
agreed to conceptually.
Let me reframe the question another way. What is the last date on which we have to submit a design to NJDOT to be compliant with their requirements for providing the money for the project?
I don't know, Deanna?
We already submitted the design that we had back in July. So it would be a modification of that if we are changing it. And I can't give you the date on the last date that it's acceptable.
Okay, it sounds like there is some flexibility there, though.
We hope DOT will continue to be flexible with us if we decide to change the design, yes.
Okay.
I mean, right, we have to provide something to them and they have to react to it, Sam. So in an ideal world, they're still as flexible as they have been over the years.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it was like, this business with the intersection design where, there's an October 8th kind of like semi-hard cutoff on it. And it seems that for the rest of the design, there's not like a semi-hard cutoff on it, which means that in principle, we actually can probably carry on discussing it through December, right?
I think we've already gone past the prior deadlines and they've made extensions for this grant a couple times. So at some point they will say stop, but they haven't yet.
Okay. Well, I'd like to say that as a final point, is like to give my thanks to the engineers for all they've had to bear with this street redesign project, because it's been a thing.
Yeah. Thank you for recognizing that, Sam, and saying it. Thank you. Do we have any other public comment on the on Witherspoon Street, the
I
intersection?
don't see any. I
Okay.
don't see any.
All right, thanks, Dolores. All right, are there any other council or staff comments on this that we need to consider or listen to? Michael?
Yeah, hi, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to, after watching Mr. Speck's presentation, I just wanted to touch base on one example that I was glad he spent a lot of time on it, because I'm very familiar with it, the Church Street Marketplace, which is a 4-block pedestrian mall in Burlington, Vermont. As planning director in Burlington, I had several years to actually be on that street and use that street and see it on a daily basis. And just a couple of things I think the public should know about it. It's a permanent pedestrian mall. I never in 3 years saw the bollards ever change or move or be open. Also, deliveries and access other than pedestrian access was for the most part from the rear of the buildings. And many of the blocks had structured parking garages directly behind the buildings up front on Church Street. So I just wanted, I didn't know if Mr. Speck wasn't as familiar with that particular pedestrian mall, but I wanted to fill in some of the facts, because a slightly different situation than we have here. There was not really flexibility built into that space, was fully pedestrian for 4 blocks. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you, Michael. Any other comments that we should hear today or consider? Okay, great. Well, Deanna, Jim, Michael, everyone involved, staff-wise, thank you ever so much. And council, thank you. All right, so David?
I move to adjourn.
Thank you. Is there a second? Eve has the second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, a good day to all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.